and poverty. And I was an art student at the University of Washington in Seattle and went to the first march against Vietnam in San Francisco in 1967. After I dropped out of school and went to Berkeley, I learned transcendental meditation. I studied at Merritt College in Oakland and took Black Studies at the time of the Panthers. Kathleen Cleaver came to my classroom with a whole group of Panthers. The early 70s, I moved to Bellingham and went to Western. I had the great good fortune of finding our meditation and social justice path and studied Prout in the early 1970s. I heard the message of being great by meditation and service and came back to the Northwest from a Midwest retreat with do something resounding in my head. Oh, now I can see all of you again on the side. Did it go through?
Yep, we've got it.
Oh, that's amazing.
It takes a village.
Yes,
Yes.
it does. So do something. I was able to convince the Washington State Social Services to license our yoga commune for foster care. You know, I was taking the example of what was going on in the Midwest. Where was that? Madison? The women's home?
Our
And
house.
yeah, and so I helped two teenagers, and I'm still one of them named Kelly. I married Claire and had 4 children, and I have 6 grandchildren. And are we getting close to being able to see pictures?
Oh, we're seeing it. Just tell us when she should change to a new.
Oh, so what are you on? I'm not seeing anything.
Oh,
We're
you need to
seeing
go
your
back.
painting.
Go back
Now.
into
Okay.
go back
Okay,
into
good.
this. You seeing it?
Yeah.
Good.
So
Okay.
next slide. I was just showing you that I was already thinking about social justice.
Ah, the family.
So here's my family. The oldest, Caton, is on the left, and Santa and her husband are in the center, and Colin and his family are on the right. It's a big family. It's kind of amazing.
Who's the top left?
That's Caton's husband, Dennis, who's 18 years old, her senior.
Oh,
He's
okay.
almost as old as Claire. And I think I'm the one who said, if you love him, you can't discriminate against him. And they're still married all this time later.
So you have
So
6
then,
grandchildren. Yeah.
next slide. And you'll have to tell me when you can see it because I don't know. This is Galen. Galen was profoundly disabled by meningitis when he was 8.5 months old. And he learned to walk with facilitation and was mainstreamed in normal classes in school for a couple of years. It was a very long process, lots of therapy. He couldn't do anything by himself, really. But he passed when he was 13 in the September of 1990. That was just before P.R. Sarkar passed. And I was given many remarkable opportunities to serve him. Then next photo. This is me hugging a column at the Supreme Court. And I think I was a little optimistic at that point. This is probably in, let's see, maybe 1998, 99 in there. And I was thinking about the Chipko movement in India and the women who hugged the trees so that they wouldn't be cut down. And now I'll tell you a little bit about school, and we'll just leave that slide there. If you can see me hugging a column. I became determined to go to school after Galen passed. By the mid-90s, I was making up for my hippie youth and learned to use a computer, research, and gained confidence. I worked as an English as a second language and writing tutor at community college and transferred to the University of Washington Bothell campus to study interdisciplinary social sciences. It was society, ethics, and human behavior. Specifically, I was studying the economic and social rights of the United Nations conventions that are sometimes similar to Proudist ideas. Also, law and policy, labor history, neoliberalism, globalization. I loved student life. I studied abroad in Ireland and came to know about international trade and development in Ireland. It was the time of the Celtic Tiger and a change to the common currency of the European Union. It was also the time of the big tech crash. So twice I studied human rights in Washington, D.C., and I was a teaching assistant and gave a talk on humanitarian intervention and the sanctions that are not very humanitarian. In fact, my conclusion was that there was really nothing humanitarian about it.
I want
And
to know if I'm at the right place in those pictures.
we're
Or-
still at the tree hugging, the column hugging.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just had to have a placeholder when I told you about all this education. Let's see. I published my first article in the UW-Bothell paper about that trip to Washington, D.C. Something got going in me. Then I was studying qualitative research methodology and the community diversity conversation circles that were happening in our city. And I researched what's called the edgewalker phenomenon about people who are loosely tied to the cultural milieu that they're raised in. I wrote a paper on the UN and the Convention on the Right to Development and the ethics of including everyone in the circle of concern. And all this was leading up to the World Trade Organization coming to Seattle. So we can go to the next slide now. So in November of '99, it shook the world when the Singapore round of the new investment ended. And all because we were out on the streets for a couple of weeks and the police rioted. I mean, there was so much that could be said about it. And I've been trying to write up all my notes. The night before the start was an activist march around the black tie event for all the delegates. We went around the Kingdome that still lived in Seattle. Kingdome was torn down, blown up. The night before, we activists circled their meeting, and in the rainy night, I met Vandana Shiva and introduced myself to her. So this is the next morning, these turtles. On September 29th of that fateful year, thousands of people gathered at Seattle Center Arena for a labor rally and a march. We were there hours talking. It was beautiful. And these turtles symbolize the alliance of environmental activists and labor unionists that was kind of a new thing. They were often in different camps, but trade had brought them together. Next slide. This was outside of the stadium when I came out. And it's just a beautiful example of activist art. That big pay sign is for where you park by the Seattle Center. And that huge dark figure really caught my attention. Next slide. So here is Vandana Shiva talking to J.C. Chair, who came from Quebec. Her women's collective planned to bring women from all over the world to Washington, D.C. and New York City in the fall of 2000, the World March of Women. And so I met J.C. and spent a lot of time with her. They had the best analysis I had seen so far of the WTO's effect on poverty and violence against women. So I organized for months to make an event in Seattle. I couldn't get it together. I went to many different groups, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and the National Organization of Women and so many others. I remember going to Evergreen College in Olympia and talking to Asian women and so many groups. So, and I have this hilarious huge spreadsheet of all these people I was meeting and trying to organize for a Seattle march for the World March of Women. And it was all written by hand because it was pre-computer days. I mean, we were just beginning. I had no idea how to do that all by computer. And so next slide, you see that one, the yellow sign?
Yes.
So I met Sanjay, who came all the way from the Narmada Valley in India. You can see Sanjay on the other side of the sign from me with a cap on his head. And he worked with this National Alliance of Peoples movement. So I see this big sign and I think, well, okay, Indian Peoples Movement, this is good. So I hold his sign for quite a long time because he didn't have anybody else to help him yet. So we had a lot of exchanging of emails, and I had so many contacts after all this. And I was writing on the Prout listserv, so the other Proutists were hearing some of my adventures. So next slide. And these are pictures of the World March of Women, and you can see Devanishta there and Arunima and these beautiful signs. And I convinced maybe 20 people in our network to go to Washington, D.C. and New York City for the World March of Women.
Our daughter Lena was there too, and
Yeah.
I was there.
We were outside the White House on the Mall and had a big march through town past the International Monetary Fund. It was a glorious day, and the banners waved, and the people in their traditional clothes were fabulous. We gave heaps of petitions from all over the world to the United Nations in New York City. And we heard great speeches and made a lot of wonderful connections with women from everywhere. We were feeling solidarity with the people of the world. And I published another article in the University of Washington newspaper with photos, you know, big double center spread. It was quite wonderful again. And then another one. Next slide.
Going up
In
think
January,
twice. Let me go back. No.
do you have Brazil?
Um,
Slide
I d-
11.
I don't see a numbering on them. Let me go back up.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just after the World March of Women.
here we go. Previous slide. And is that where we're supposed to be right now?
Yeah, we're supposed to see
Some acharyas on the left.
Dadas, and yeah, and a big sign.
Yep.
So in January of 2001, Dada Maheshvarananda asked me to come to Porto Alegre, Brazil for the World Social Forum that was organized internationally after the inspiration of the WTO in Seattle. And Claire was very distraught at the thought of my going to Brazil. He said, "You can't go to Brazil by yourself." And I said, "I won't be alone." And that was absolutely the case. I gave a talk about the WTO in Seattle and learned a lot about translation. I was not aware enough to always use terms that could be translated. Like, I think we called it the carnival against capitalism because we didn't always see the serious part. I clearly was not in the lockdown, people going to jail. And anyway, it was very interesting for him to try to translate what I was saying to the group. I brought them a VCR tape from the independent media that was made of all the things that happened in Seattle, called "This Is What Democracy Looks Like." And this one lovely woman that I know now spent days in a little house on Queen Anne Hill collecting all of the footage that different people took from whatever part of the marches they were in. And it was all, she cut it all into a VCR. And we had a celebration of 20 years later at the Museum of History and Industry by Lake Union, and it was very fun to all be together and see it. And I had learned some French, and so at least I had some Romance language, and I'm struggling with Portuguese and Spanish and French, and somehow we all just talked enough pidgin language with English that we could understand lots of people. So I wonder, you see how beautiful these pictures are. I mean, the artistry that happened and the people from the Amazon who were there, and of course, people from everywhere. Next slide. So this is about preserving our native natural world, an ecological group. And this is a whole bunch of Margies that I'm with right next to the Dada. And boy, we had an amazing time. And I got to go to Brazil 3 times. But shortly after this first World Social Forum, I was asked to come to Wellington, New Zealand by our friend Bruce Dyer. And he did a conference on globalization and localization and asked me to be the master of ceremonies. Well, that one was an amazing story because after I had left my house that morning to go to the dentist in the airport, we had the Nisqually earthquake when I was at the University of Washington Bothell campus turning in my applications for graduate school. And my flight out of Seattle was canceled because the earthquake had damaged the control tower. And I got rescheduled out of Vancouver. But as I'm thinking about it, I think, how am I ever going to get there in time? I've never been to the Vancouver airport. And I actually went to Payne Field in Everett and didn't have any idea that there were no commercial flights. But a very nice fellow that I met was willing to fly me up in his small plane. And he flew me up to the Vancouver airport for a couple $100. And I made a plane that went to Honolulu and Sydney and back to Wellington. And I made it in time for the start of the conference. It was quite remarkable. So I don't have any pictures of that because a lot of that is pre-digital. And I haven't digitized all of those piles of photos yet. So in that June of 2001, I graduated from UW Bothell. And that was pretty exciting for a college dropout. It took me a really long time to get to a degree. So that summer, my husband's family had a reunion in Norway to celebrate living in the same little town north of Bergen called Naustdal. And so all the time I had said, I need to go to Sweden. That's where my family came from. If we're going to go to Norway. And he went home with Colin, our youngest son. And I took my own little journey. I went from Oslo, where I stayed with Aditi in a house she was staying in. And then I went to Stockholm and had a wonderful time around and stayed with Aditi there. And I went to the Vimmerby Training Center in the south of Sweden. And then I went to Copenhagen and stayed with our old friend Vishwashanti, who a lot of us know from when he was in Seattle studying Prout. And then I went on to Munich and met up with a Margi named Satish, who was a postal worker that I'd met in Brazil. And we went all the way to Jelenia Góra in Poland to the master unit there. And I gave talks about the alter globalization movement all along the way. So I had amazing help planning this from many people. And I just got a rail pass and had to go all the way back to Oslo to fly home. So it was quite the adventure I had. And Poland was absolutely wonderful. It felt a lot like Ireland. People are very chatty and it was very fun.
Am I still
So
on the right slide?
the what?
Am I still on the right slide?
You are.
Okay,
Um, yeah, I have to talk here for a minute before we do the next one.
no problem.
So I went to meetings 6 times altogether in Brazil, Miami, Perugia, Italy, and Mumbai. And we translated my World March of Women article into Portuguese to hand out. And I was able to be a Prout observer on the International Council of the World Social Forum because of Bruce Dyer, who knew enough people somehow to get my foot in the door. And Bruce also introduced me to Noam Chomsky one day, so I got to shake his hand. And then the story that's already leaked is, yes, I was kissed 3 times by Lula. I had helped to edit After Capitalism, and the leaders in the International Council who were going to go see him, all of a sudden there was a buzz, and Lula was going to come talk to everybody. And first, they weren't going to let me in. And so I talked to these 2 men that I'd made friends with from Senegal, and they said, "Of course you get in." And we were prepared. I had a copy of After Capitalism, and Devashish was there and doing some translation for me. And he walked up to me, and I was able to present the book, and he kissed me the 3 times that they do in the south of Brazil. And I can't account for how these things could happen.
Can you
It's
tell us who Lula is?
Oh, yes, of course I will. Lula was the president of Brazil at that time, and he was displaced by Bolsonaro, who put him into jail. And now Lula is still the president of Brazil. And he's from the Workers' Party, so he was very well connected to all of these people that had started it. Well, it was an international coalition that started the whole forum, but Lula's a pretty good guy, and they have created Mercosur, which is an alternate trade group of countries in the Southern Cone and the Global South. So then, and I'm not ready to move yet. And to top off the frenetic year I had traveling all over and going to all these different events, we moved to Everett from our house in the country so that I could be closer to go to graduate school. And I was accepted in the School of Geography at the University of Washington, Seattle. So I got a chance to confront my old boogeyman where I dropped out and went to the Seattle campus. But just before school started that fall, 9/11 happened. And so many of the students couldn't get to campus soon. They were stranded all those different places in the world. So that was an amazing start of the new school year in graduate school. Let's see. So I'm going back to Brazil in my notes. Apparently, I'm skipping around. And I got to go to the Future Vision community southwest of Sao Paulo, where Didi Mitra has her amazing place that has awakened so many people. I got to visit MST is the movement in Brazil of landless people. And they had taken over a building in Sao Paulo, and I got to go there and see the amazing self-organization of all these families who are living there. And I got to visit in Rio. There was a joggery I went to, and with Dada Maheshvarananda, I went to see a rural community where the brother there was helping everybody make their own local economy. he would run swap meets kind of. They had their own printed currency that they would share with each other so that their money stayed in their community, and they sold each other things that, extra vegetables or things they didn't want anymore, or, all kinds of things. But that way their money wasn't draining out of their community. And it was a beautiful place with a huge medicinal garden, because this man also was treating people's illnesses. Let's see. And then I also, here, back on track, one other little bit before we go to the next slide. So my geography department supported my activist travel intellectually and financially. I was told by a professor one day in a very quiet voice that they didn't usually accept people that were my age. I was late 40s. And he said it very quietly, but the exception they were making was that I was an activist. So they said, we thought this would have some legs, so we decided you could come. So that was quite a compliment, I thought. And I was a paid student teacher 2 times, teaching globalization. And one day I remember having to stand up and, and prepare a speech on international debt levels, and, and be able to keep the attention of this huge lecture hall of freshmen. And then I was able to publish an article in a radical geography journal called Counter-Hegemonic Dispersions, the World Social Forum, in a leftist journal called Antipode. And that was March of 2004. And in volume 36, number 2, if anybody wants to find it, it's easily found on the web. So next slide. Yes, are you there?
Yep.
So finally, in 2004, I got to go to India for the very first time. And I'd been invited to the Narmada Valley, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And there was the 5th meeting of the World Social Forum. So that was happening in Mumbai. So I got into Delhi, and I stayed at the YMCA where everybody stays, near the Paharganj. And I was booked a train trip up to Haridwar, and I met up with the India tour in Rishikesh. And I was in absolute heaven finally being in India and seeing all these beautiful ashrams and mandirs and the chaos of it. And so I got to be there, and then I went to Delhi with a couple of Dadas after I'd been there for a few days. And then I luckily had decided to fly to Mumbai, because then I was able to go to the Narmada Valley trip that I'd been invited to go on. So this is a picture. The woman with the red is Maida Patkar, and she's a bit of a folk hero whose organization arranged this trip. Well, they had activists from all over the world, a lot of Pakistani, Indian students who were from the US, a wonderful young guy who worked in London at the school that studied the Bretton Woods agreements. I mean, this was a man who knew a lot about the details. So I had studied the resistance to the big dam projects north of Mumbai in Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. So connecting with Sanjay in Seattle at the WTO brought me to the Narmada Valley for a tour of the tribal villages where they were fighting the big dams. Many of their villages had been inundated with water, and people had died being stuck in the mud, and their beautiful temple was inundated with water, and the government didn't seem to care. Our group of global dynamic activists traveled by train to Baroda, which is an ancient town where there was a lot of sectarian violence, and the Modi right wing tore down a temple that was ancient, and people were killed, and we went there by train, but not with Maida. She was in a different part of the train because she couldn't be seen with all these international people. That wasn't safe for her. So we traveled by train and jeep and boat and feet. And we went all over the valley to see the resistance and to give encouragement to the people. I saw a lot of spontaneous kirtans and little Mela festivals. We rode long hours in jeeps, and often I was with the several fun and dynamic Italians, and we would sing Beatles songs, and luckily I could remember a lot of them. We slept on floors in people's homes. We visited extractive mining sites. We went to a school for a rally against Coca-Cola because they were using too much of the water, groundwater of this community. And they were asking me to give little speeches, and that was all amazing. So the next picture is of Bhopal. So we went to Bhopal as a city where Union Carbide plant exploded and rained toxicity on the community in 1984. And the company, Union Carbide, has never made reparations. So many people were ill. Many children were born deformed and with disabilities, and the poisonous gas had damaged people's lungs. It was very hard situation, and they're still living with this aftermath all this time later. So there in Bhopal, we met with a women's organizing group, and I was interviewed by a reporter. And the article appeared in the Mumbai Times of India newspaper. So I wrote a little section out of it, and this is what this reporter said. Many attendees of the World Social Forum share the same sentiment as Doris, that development needs to be pursued at all sections of society and must be tangible and long-term. Instead, if it serves only a chosen few, is short-term and is disrupting the primary needs and rights of a larger section of society. Then it needs to be booed out and opposed in the name of globalization. The ideological gaps are getting widened as some are identifying themselves as superior and others as inferior. I really don't think that I said all of these things, but this is her interpretation, I guess. According to Doris, this could be detrimental to the human society. The World Social Forum is not only a platform for agitators, but it has attracted participation of social scientists, economists, writers, filmmakers, photographers, painters, farmers, tribals, professors, and students. The first thing when I got to Dada Naik's house, who hosted me in Mumbai, was, "Were you interviewed in the paper?" Well, I had no idea that this had happened, so he showed me the paper. And their young friend, a friend of their daughter, had translated it for me so that I had a copy that I could read. And then the other picture, let's see, next picture. No, the other side of this picture is a man by a body of water. And this was a wonderful man, Sanjay, who was a first responder in Bhopal and joined this tour and told us all about what he did in the, in the aftermath of the explosion. And he was showing us all on our tour a People's Dam project. So this is something that the local people had made. And we toured the powerhouse, and we went to the local school. It was very fun to see that children were learning geography by picking up the trash and looking at where these food goods were manufactured. So they had this huge map on the wall of India, and they were learning geography that way. So then next picture is the Margis marching in Mumbai. And I believe that my sign says, one people, one hearth. And all of it was so much fun. I can't tell you how cool it was to be able to get to do all these things. So in the interest of time, I'm not going farther on that. And we're moving to the next slide. Because we tried to make a World Social Forum happen in Seattle for the fall of 2004. So after almost 2 years of work, the work ended. And the tribe said that they had not, we have a lot of local tribes here in the Northwest Washington. They said they'd not been adequately included. And then the youth backed out as well, and it was canceled, even though we had the support and funding of David Corton of Yes Magazine. So we tried for such a long time to make it happen, and we weren't able to do it. So after that, in 2006, I finished my thesis. And well, I actually crashed after a lot of this travel because this was really hard work, like the Narmada Valley was. And I joke in the memoir that I've been writing about my still too heavy big suitcase that I didn't pull all the way through that valley, but it did me in a bit. So I finished my thesis, and it was this critique of neoliberal hegemony and counter-hegemonic alternatives of the World Social Forum, and I graduated. And that was pretty amazing. And now, the forums have been held all over the world, as well as the Economic Democracy Forum that was put on the East Coast, and a number of our friends worked on. And I'm sure most of you know that there was just a successful forum in Westchester County outside of New York City. So it's amazing that these forums have legs. I haven't researched where else they're happening, but I'm so happy that it's still happening. So then next slide. Then we're up to 2006, and Claire and I went on a country tour to India with Water for People, which is a part of the American Waterworks Association that Claire has been active in for years and years. And they do water development in multiple countries. So Claire was part of building the program called the World Water Corps that sent US professionals to build local capacity in many countries. And let's see, I can do a partial list. Honduras and Guatemala and Rwanda and Uganda and Malawi and India, quite a lot of different places, but they started out like with putting in a local tube well that nobody knew how to maintain. And so over the years, it turned into a much more thoughtful program of how to engage the local communities. So we toured all around Kolkata and down to the Sundarban Islands to see local development projects. And both money and technical expertise were being shared and developing the work locally. And this first picture is one of the horrible wells. You see the base is broken, and the rod that works the pump is bent, and everything looks very dirty, and it's not the way a well is supposed to look. And this other picture is one I got in Darjeeling when we went up north. And I could see where Kanchenjunga was supposed to be, but I never got to see it. They had a huge painting, so you could imagine what it would look like if the weather was good. And but these jerry cans look awfully heavy, and women endlessly have to carry water. So this next photo is a bathhouse. And Water for People built this community bathhouse in a site where there were many transient people who could pay a few coins and use the bathroom and have a shower and clean their clothes. And it made a huge difference in the life for all these people. Oh, and then I have a little note that I'm supposed to read you a story. I'm going to wait a minute. I have to look at what the next slide is. Excuse me. What are you looking at? The jerry cans, right? No, the bathroom.
Now we've moved on to a path where there's three women
Yes.
with an umbrella.
Yep. So this is the next part of the story. The next year, Claire assigned me the job of being the lead volunteer on a Water for People team to go to Shagar Island in the Bay of Bengal. So Claire said he couldn't just send a team of engineers, that he had to send a social scientist as well, and that was me. The southern tip is the last place the Ganges touches on its way south. So there's an auspicious temple where people come by ferry from the Kwakdip ferry station just south of Calcutta. And they come and they gather Ganges water and they do their blessings. And this man is Beepin. He's part of the local NGO that was working on our travel all around this island. And this is how beautiful the island is. We were there at harvest time and we were doing an assessment. So there's a little bit I'm supposed to read, a different document. The idea of Water for People is to blanket areas with improved access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. The wells are repaired. A management committee forms around each well that includes women, and that is our main demand. And hygiene training begins, and the children start learning about hygiene in schools, and latrines are built. And we work with the local Water for People staff and a number of local community development staff and volunteers from NGOs. And Claire had managed the growth of this group called World Water Corps to speed up the work by sending volunteers to work with local staff so that they would have more capacity to do this work and take it all on themselves. So in 2006, we'd had a tour, and then in 2007, I was the one leading a team. So it was pretty amazing. And there's a description here that I need to tell you. Well, maybe I'm not that organized. Nope. I don't know what I did with that little piece. So next picture. And this will show you how much the land is assaulted by rising seas and this attempt by local people to build up shorelines. And they've lost islands already in this chain of islands. So that was tragic, right? It's very hard for people to live in these places. And but gosh, I had wonderful fun with children. One time I had a huge group of children and they were following the car that everybody had been riding in, and they were willing to play games. We were marching back and forth and raising our arms, and it was a very cheerful place despite all the difficulties of living in that kind of a spot. The next one, please. So let's see, I have to look. So I'm going to read you a little bit of my memoir that I have been working on for years now, taking a lot of writing classes and doing the work. And you're seeing a picture of a bridge now?
Hmm.
Okay.
With
Hot.
two men with pots on their head.
Yep. Hot. So hot. We had walked maybe a mile along a dirt road next to a channel. The only people in view were several young boys playing below at the water's edge. As our small group passed, they mimed statues to pull our attention and danced a dance with limbs askew. They hooted and called out. Beyond them was more low-lying land and a freighter slowly moving southward in the heat through the Bay of Bengal. We walked on. My backpack produced the only moisture, a puddle on my back and a soaked salwar. I could see where we were going in the distance. Farther north, coming into view, there were many more people in the bridge. Rising out above the channel was a high bamboo bridge, and I knew I had to go over. Deep breath, hold and release. Okay, breathe. The curve rose, a fine arch, many supports lashed together, held all in place. Many people passed over while we approached. You can do this. I pulled my hat and secured it. Checking the scene, I could see the palms on the far shore and in the distance the channel and a small village, the bridge. I took my place in line, stepped on, and felt the flex and sway. It was a footbridge wide enough to slide tense fingers on bamboo rails. At about the top, I could see a man coming toward me with a huge bundle on his shoulders and head. I took my place and made myself small as he passed with a large grin and dancing eyes. Then, as I headed down, I could see the fishing boats tied below in the mud. The sound of laughing children came on the breeze like bells. Beautiful orange, green, and red colors garlanded the fishing boats, while blue heaped piles of nets decorated the shore. Beyond, we could see acres of tarps with drying fish laid out in all directions. One of the worst wells was just down the path from a movie hall made on the beach from bamboo and tarps. As we inspected the pump and flow, we took a photo with the catalog number for data identification and noted the GPS coordinates. The Bengali speakers talked with local folk to record their understanding of the seasonality of the water, whether the water was brackish, all those details that we recorded by hand, I might add. In 2009, Water for People announced that our goal for Shagar Island resulted in complete coverage. So amazing success from having all of these teams move out around the whole island and assess and then get the work done. Pretty remarkable. So this is one more picture now of a fish camp. Are you seeing the fish camp? Blue tarps and fish everywhere drying.
There we go.
And then one more slide.
Next one? Or one
Yes.
more back.
Yep. And this is my World Water Corps team leaving the island. We had to catch the ferry before Cyclone Sitter hit, and it did a lot of damage in Bangladesh. But these were professionals from around the world. One woman was from Calcutta. One woman is an immigrant Indian who was in Canada with her Canadian husband, who was a municipal worker. And one fellow was an Army technician in Hawaii, and he came to be on the team. And we all worked together beautifully, but we had to do all this data collection by hand. And the next year or two, Claire was able to go to Uganda, and it was all done on a smartphone. Nobody had to have a piece of paper. It was, they'd do the GPS and they'd put in the coordinates and they'd go down the list of all the things you had to keep track of. And now here's the next photo. This is my other team I decided to show you. These are my grandchildren, and the oldest has started college. And they're a lot of fun. And let's see. Then I had a couple things I was going to tell you that I'm still working with the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. And last Labor Day, we protested at Palantir, you know, the AI company that does so much surveillance and works with ICE. And yesterday, I traveled north to Bellingham with my friend who's the head of the Washington Fair Trade Coalition, who's, oh, I don't know, maybe 30. We went to an activist meeting in Bellingham to organize a cross-border gathering at the Canadian border on May 30th, so coming up. Excuse me. And we're activating people in the run-up to the USMCA trade agreement negotiations. So the United States, Mexico, Canada agreements, which of course Trump has blown up everything about these agreements probably, but still the process will go along. So we met with some amazing young people who told us about conditions in the Philippines, and they were students at Western, and another fellow who was a professor at Western who gave a talk about what he knew on the, oh, you know, how they have workers bust in these days. You know, they're trying to break unions, they're guest workers, but they're taking away jobs from the people that have already been working these farms in Whatcom County. So many still issues are still as strong as they were all these years ago. And so we're trying to have some effect on this. And, you know, sometimes we write letters. And one woman was incredibly knowledgeable about some of the negatives of AI and gave a talk about her project with privacy in Washington State. And the fact that they're doing facial recognition and that setting prices by what they know you're willing to pay, so that if you're a person who's willing to buy a lot of expensive goods, you have to pay a higher price. And this woman was quite fascinating. I'm going to check into her organization. So let's see, next slide. I thought I'd show you a couple of pieces of art that I've done. I think I did this in 2001, but I'm very happy with this mountain still in watercolor. And next one is much more recent abstracts. And I was going to read you a couple poems too, if you're still hanging in there with me.
I think everybody's here. Nobody's left.
That's pretty amazing.
I
So
think
this I call Space
like
on the
listening to this
Left.
story.
Huh?
I think they like listening to this story.
Oh, very good. And on this right is a mandala that I designed and made out of stained glass. And then I was asked about my garden. So this is a picture of my beautiful poppies that are blooming now. And 2 seasons ago, I did experimental work with the Washington State University Organic Program. They have a station up in Skagit County, and I got some sweet potato starts, and I grew, oh, I don't know, a big box of sweet potatoes. And I had to count how many wireworm holes there were and how many were good enough size and how many were substandard and nobody would want to buy, and which varieties were better out of the 3 that I grew. So that was incredibly fun. And I'm trying to do less gardening because I find it's a lot harder on me. So now I'm going to give 2, maybe 3 poems, depending on how the crowd goes. So when I was in Brazil the first time in Porto Alegre, and I had to go get on a plane, I had a little Portuguese dictionary, and I started writing a poem in Portuguese. Well, I had to switch to English pretty fast or I was going to lose it. But this was quite the amazing moment. In Portuguese, it's encantamento, which means enchantment. I witnessed the birth of a new world in Porto Alegre, Brazil, and 6 billion midwives lent a hand. The belly of our mother bulged, even though her abundance was shackled. A broiling wind arose as a witch stirred her vacant cauldron that gaped with a sacred hunger. Her enchantment swirled round the globe. A corpuscular uncle collapsed at the side of the cratered road, and few came to his aid. Some made a monument, but it fell into disrepair. Meanwhile, our mother called to her children to gather at her side. The seeds couldn't hold back and tumbled out as the midwives watched in awe. Then, by struggle and miracle, each seed broke open, and an army of workers suckled. Their backs became strong and their voices joyous. Celebration spread throughout the world, and in the barrios, the mothers ate mangoes. Together, they shouted that, choked up, that humanity is one family. Flying home from the christening, the lights of Caracas, Cuba, and Key West blended into the starry night. A piece of my heart has taken root in Brazil. Later, over the American South, built on the backs of slaves, I recall the power of words and the magical web they spin, the strength of hands held together, and the work of all for all. Another world is possible. Sorry, I got tears in my eyes now. And I tell a little bit, do you all still have patience? Is anybody running out? I could tell you a little story about an amazing adventure on the way home in Sao Paulo. I
Please.
met a woman at the airport who lived in Olympia. She was from Manaus in the Amazon, but she had married a professor who came down to do research and lived in Olympia. So we talked and she said, well, if you've got a layover, why don't you come with me? So I didn't have any reason to say no. And she was going to see a priest that was her dear friend, Frère Ticão. And so we got picked up at the airport and brought to his house. And pretty soon people were leaving, and I was there with the housewoman, and she couldn't speak English. And then somebody came back for me, and I was taken to the church social hall. This was a Catholic priest, and they asked me to talk about the World Social Forum because it was obviously expanded by this experience. And somehow I managed to be understood by these people and tell them about the possibility of another world. And then they took me back to the airport, and I probably kept writing my poem. And I can't believe that I could make myself understood, but there you have it. Miracles happen, I guess. So this other one is called Guardians and Activists for the Future. It says I wrote it in 2021. Excuse me, 2021. We are guardians and activists for the future, for the just borns and the not yet borns, the souls that are jammed up at the cosmic borders. They're the ones that will have a chance to live with the still bending arc of moral justice that pushes ahead to the time when the givers and the thinkers and lovers can create one human society and welcome the future all beings inherit. They be lining up with their best little cherub selves to have another try at perfection, to make the world better. And there's one more if you can stand it, and then I'm going to stop.
Doris, we try to give some time for people
That's fine.
to ask questions, and it's 9:19, and
That's
we try to
fine.
be done by 9:30. So if we could find out if anyone has any comments or questions, I think it would be a good time to do that. And then if there's extra time, maybe you could read your, I don't mean to jump in here, but
No,
we're
you're
running out of
good.
time.
I'm fine with this.
Okay,
I have been well regarded by all of you.
great. I don't see any questions. Go ahead with your poem. I don't see any
Okay.
questions.
Maybe that's a vote, huh? I wrote this when I was in community college in the late 90s. This is called Planetary Formulary. I had a very interesting class that was lab biology and writing all mixed together in computer. And so I wrote this poem for the class, Planetary Formulary. This commentary is somewhat cautionary. Sometimes it's necessary to be visionary. It's often scary. One might feel wary, but it seems so contrary to be an adversary of the planet. It can be ordinary to be proprietary. To some, it is hereditary and even customary. Some see land as their sanctuary. They like to be so solitary, even if it's temporary and even somewhat arbitrary. They think they own the planet. My poem is now accusatory. We better call the intermediary, or even the constabulary in the planetary mortuary. Because of those who are mercenary and would commit a vagary, will have to be literary and write a sad obituary for the planet. The necessary corollary is that it will have to be imaginary. To some, it will be voluntary. To some, call it contributory. It will be evolutionary and even extraordinary. It's supersalutary to the stated beneficiary, our planet.
Beautiful presentation, Doris, and beautiful poems.
Thank you.
You used all the RY words.
I tried. Yeah, I had so much fun being in school as an older student. It's very different than when you're young, I would say.
An amazing presentation.
Thank you all for all being generous to listen.
Now all of you know why I've been bugging her about doing this.
Yeah. Well, I overcame some difficulties. I spent a little time with my Apple helpers on the phone. I'm glad I paid for that. And now I have I didn't tell my other wonderful thing, that the University of Washington wants archives of all of this stuff, photos and writings and published stuff. And it's an overwhelming job. I need to find a grad student that wants to help. Maybe can get credit and get some funding. I don't know what I'm going to do.
We have
I
a
have all
couple
these
of we have a couple of comments.
Yeah.
Mark says the last one sounds like a rap. You were before your time. Thank you, sister, and inspiration. And Eva would like to say something.
Well, I can see why you called the talk I Caught a Wave, because first of all, I mean, we can see what the wave was that you caught. It just carried you forward. And I think what's so wonderful about this talk is how positive you are, despite all the awful stuff that you had to witness and help repair. So I enjoyed this very much. And your last poem was brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
I might have another one here.
Yeah, Prakash.
Doris, it's so wonderful to hear the story. Having spent several years living in Seattle with Evanista in the in the late 70s, before you did all these tours, it was, and seeing your family in the early years before they grew up and became parents themselves, and just running into you over the years at many conferences and seeing you, when we visit Seattle to see family. it's just amazing to see, the images of the stories. We knew you travel these places, but to see and hear your telling the experience and seeing the images, and I could see why the university was in Seattle wants to have this as part of their archives to share. But I look
Pretty
forward to
amazing.
sharing this. We've been recording it, so we've got the images that you shared, and now we'll be able to show that. And then, if you would send a copy of those poems, maybe like an image of it or something like that,
Hmm.
that would also be a wonderful thing to share with
Yeah,
people.
I can.
And you sent David Nishtas has your presentation, so if you feel okay us sharing that as well, they can see in the video, but they might want to be able to just quickly look at the pictures.
Hmm.
So, but
Yeah, it's all exciting. Um, this presentation will be a great introduction for people. I'm trying to write narrative about a lot of the things that happen and then hot link it to the dense stuff that not everybody's willing to read. So
and
I'm
wonderful
trying to
for your
make it
grandchildren to
accessible.
see this too.
What?
For your grandchildren to see this,
I hope my kids are going to watch it.
and your
Yes.
kids, of course. Well, if your grandkids watch it, the kids will probably want to see it.
They hardly know anything about this. I don't get the floor. They're busy.
That's what grandparents.
Well,
You,
Pretty
you know,
common.
one of the things I want to interject is some people have the good fortune of being at critical junctures in human society. And I think we just witnessed a life that was spent enjoying some of those, uh, cosmic endorsements, whatever you want to call it, that you got to be a first person observer of so many incredible things,
mhm.
and very few people have that opportunity or experience. So we are very appreciative of your willingness to share some
Thank
of
you.
those experiences. So thank you very much.
Well, I've written about 50 pages of memoir so far. So I hope I get it published in some timely way.
I wanted to say I loved your artwork. And
There's tons of it.
when I was editing Rising Sun, you sent artwork for us, and it was always splendid. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that. So inspirational.
A lot of it's sitting on Instagram. I don't post anymore, but the account is still there. It just says Doris Olivers Art, all in lowercase.
On the Instagram, Doris Oliver's art.
Hmm.
Okay.
Just lowercase run together. So it's I don't, I can't account for an awful lot about how my life happened the way it did, but John said something in what he wrote about me that I actually had pioneer descendants and pilgrims. I mean, not descendants, backwards, forebears. And they came from England in 1634 and got kicked out of Salem because they weren't doctrinaire. They believed truth was in you. You knew truth. You didn't need a church doctrine. And so they went to Providence, Rhode Island with Roger Williams to found the first majoritarian community where they paid the native people for their land and they held out for the Bill of Rights when the Constitution was being signed because they knew that was important and they weren't willing to sign. So that's pretty amazing. But then I had pioneers coming to Washington State on both sides of my dad's family. Um, I often think that's just in me too. But my dad's older sister wrote a book about it, so I'm one of the few lucky ones that knows that far back. They actually know my family name is Olney. They know back to, oh wow, you found stuff. They know all the way back to the Norman conquest and the Normandy invasion. That's pretty amazing that they would know.
Thank you
So
very
They're-
much. You're so inspirational. John, do you want to say anything about our next one? We need to